Hello, Star Trek fans, and welcome to the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we're watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are on Season 7, Episode 5, Chrysalis. This episode aired October 28th, 1998.
Indeed.
Before we talk about this one, anything to say about last week's episode? Take Me Out to the Holosuite?
Yes, it was perfect.
Yeah, it was perfect.
It was a fun episode. It was nice to have sort of a goofy Trek holodeck episode.
Light-hearted, but not stupid, which is always nice.
Yes, very much so.
And not, insulting to all the women or whatever group they want to insult. Yeah, it was good. Well, should we talk about this one?
We probably should, yes.
Do you know why it's called Chrysalis?
Yes, because Sarina is like a caterpillar hatching from a chrysalis into a beautiful moth.
Oh, very nice.
Or butterfly, but moths are kind of cool too.
All right. In the cold open, poor Julian doesn't have a friend to play with. Miles is busy. Odo and Kira, who are dressed glamorously, want to be alone at Vic's. So he seems to decide to just go to bed and study a virus mutation.
Another interpretation is nobody actually wants to spend any time with Julian.
Oh, that's also a possibility. And he seems to have lost his friend Garrick. They don't spend any time together anymore.
Oh.
I heard one of the Star Trek people, I think it was Rick Berman, didn't like the implication of homosexuality and wanted to keep them separated.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Unreal.
Yeah. Anyway, well, immediately after turning off the lights, Nog calls Julian to the infirmary saying Admiral Patrick wants to see him immediately. So we go to the infirmary and we find the augments from the episode Statistical Probabilities, and they're all wearing Starfleet uniforms. Julian asks what they're doing here and where they got the uniforms, and Patrick just keeps responding with, "That's a stupid question."
Patrick does make a good Starfleet admiral.
He looks pretty good.
He holds himself very well, he wears the uniform, and he's insulting to people. Perfect admiral.
Yeah, he has nothing useful to offer. Yeah. Well, it seems that they brought Sarina for Julian because they knew that he was planning to try a new treatment on her. Julian wasn't expecting them, and he says he isn't ready to treat her yet, as he hasn't even finished modifying his surgical equipment. But Jack says they'll help. I'm sure they're ready to help.
Yeah.
And Julian asks how they got here without being questioned, and it turns out Patrick in an admiral uniform just saying, "That's a stupid question," was an effective technique. I mean, it worked on Nog.
Yes. Oh, Nog was totally taken in.
Yes. Julian then says hello to Sarina, who's not wearing a Starfleet uniform, by the way, though she continues to just stare into the distance and not respond. And Julian says he's going to do everything he can to help her. And we cue the theme song. This episode immediately has a different tone from last time we saw the augments. I was a little worried when they appeared that we were in for another round of, let's laugh at these people, but everything was like a little bit lighter.
Yes, there's a tonal shift with this episode.
Yeah.
You definitely see it played a little differently even in the beginning here.
Yeah, maybe it's because we're not focused on the differences and the quirks of the individuals as we were before.
Something I have to point out here. 1:32 in the episode, after Julian just said it's 3 a.m. and comes to the sickbay, we see Morn walking around on the promenade.
Oh.
I assume he's up to something.
I did not notice him. I assume he's just pacing until Quarks opens.
Oh, it's
just
possible.
Pacing back and forth.
Yeah.
Because what else is he doing out there at 3 a.m?
The other thing is Nog needs to question a little bit more when somebody turns up pretending to be an admiral.
Yeah.
Or the ship that brought them there.
Do a little research.
These people could be changelings.
We talked about this before, where we never look anything up. We never evaluate anything, because we also had that time where there was that diplomat who turned up, and Sisko just assumed that it was him and he was expected. And Nog certainly does that here. He doesn't do any verification that this is actually an admiral.
Now,
that's, of course, the trouble with just, you're in the uniform, you must be an admiral. And there's nothing that you have to do to verify it, like when you come on board.
Yeah, it's almost like if they weren't an admiral, they wouldn't be wearing the uniform. If they were a changeling, they would.
Yeah, right. There's no way this could be, a fake.
Yes. I feel this is a nod to Valiant, where they were all blindly following orders.
Oh.
He's in charge,
yeah.
so he must be in charge.
Of course.
You know, sort of a circular logic.
Yeah. He's got the uniform on. I have to listen to him. Well, we go to Sisko's office, and Sisko is not impressed with the augments shenanigans. He doesn't want to debate the way Starfleet treats the genetically enhanced individuals. He just wants to know what to do with these folks.
Apparently nobody in the Federation really wants to debate the morals of how you treat these people.
Well, of course not. If you talk about it, you have to admit that you're doing something terrible. Julian would like to proceed with his treatment of Sarina. He thinks she's not like the others. She's just trapped inside her own mind. He's confident he can help her. Sisko agrees and asks to keep the other augments in the cargo bay this time and get them out of those Starfleet uniforms.
There's a question here, which is everybody just going to let Julian attempt some kind of untested medical procedure on someone who perhaps can't grant full consent?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have that in my notes as well.
Shouldn't this be like kind of questionable?
Well, the doctor gave consent, so everything must be fine.
And what are your contingencies when something goes wrong? They could take the Trill approach and go, tough luck, she died.
Right. Well, we go to the cargo bay, and the augments are trying to get the room set up the same way they had it the last time they were there, with the weird cot in the middle of the room for Lauren to lounge on.
Yeah.
Julian comes in to say hi and to take Sarina to the infirmary. Lauren tells Julian that Sarina is worried it's going to hurt, but he assures her it will not. I don't know how she knew that. Was she just guessing that?
Okay, we're going straight into overanalysis. I assume Lauren has some way of detecting, if you like, the body language or the subtle, tiny ways she might actually be able to show what she's feeling or thinking. And Lauren maybe is in tune with being able to figure that out. Or maybe all of them are.
Mm-hmm.
Or having a handle maybe on her emotions a little bit more than normal people do because of their heightened senses.
Yeah, maybe. I guess we've covered before that they could determine things about people pretty easily. So I suppose she could be reading it. Or she's just making it up. There's that possibility too.
And this is almost a slight contradiction from the previous episode where Sarina did have a basic ability to communicate.
Yes.
Here, she seems much more catatonic.
Maybe it's gotten worse. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, because somehow she was able to tell Julian. We never saw how.
Yeah.
But in that previous episode, she was able to tell Julian what was going on, right, with the others.
Yeah.
And we never covered how she was able to do that. Because remember, they just cut away, and then Julian found them.
It's like her communication skills have gone backwards.
Yeah, maybe. Well, before Julian leaves, Lauren says she's not interested in him anymore. Her new crush is that gorgeous Ferengi, Nog. A scary Nog.
Interesting description of Nog.
Yeah. In the infirmary now, we get a little medical technobabble about Sarina's genetic enhancement as Julian talks to Miles. Apparently, her cerebral cortex was enhanced to process sensory information faster, but her visual and auditory systems can't channel stimuli into the cortex quickly enough. So she's out of sync and she can't focus on the world around her. And Julian needs to stimulate the growth of new synapses in the thalamus by manipulating neural proteins at a subatomic level. It's quite a mouthful.
Oh, yeah. That's almost a round of applause for getting those lines out.
Yeah. And the machine they have to do it is not accurate enough. Miles says it's impossible to make the thing that accurate, though. He says he can't break the laws of physics.
Ah, nice Scotty moment there.
Yeah.
It's impossible, Captain.
So we jump back to the cargo bay, and Jack agrees you can't break the laws of physics, but he says you can bend them. And the augments reveal that they have recalibrated the machine and sort of hot-wired it, because there's wires going everywhere.
Yeah.
So now it is accurate enough for what Julian needs. I mean, this seems pretty easy because we jump right from, here's your hot-wired machine into surgery, and we didn't we want to test it or,
They cut all that bit out. They're time constrained.
Seems scary.
They couldn't show all the people Julian was testing it on.
Well, and even for the surgeon, you would think you would want to train yourself on it, right? Try it, not to verify that the machine works, but to practice how you're going to do the work.
This is what you could use all those Jem'Hadar prisoners for.
Oh, no. You do it on a hologram. So Julian goes to work on Sarina's brain, right through her hair with little green and red lasers.
Once again, surgery with, they don't seem to do any prep.
No. And later we see Sarina still staring off into space in recovery. We show everyone waiting for some response, but there's no change. Julian asks her for a sign that she understands him, but nothing happens. Then 5 days later, Julian tells Ezri Sarina is still unresponsive. But while Ezri is talking about Julian punishing himself, he suddenly sees a commotion on the promenade, and it turns out Sarina is on her feet, and she's staring up at all the activity that's going on around on the promenade. And Julian asks what she's looking at, and she slowly says, everything. Julian is shocked, and Sarina is also surprised that she's able to speak, and she smiles broadly.
That was actually kind of cool. A classic medical drama. She's coming out of the coma.
Mm-hmm. She comes out of brain surgery, and she's 100% fine immediately.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I have to question here Ezri's counseling style. Oh, yeah, I beat myself up. Here are all the things wrong with you, Julian. How is that helping anything?
Yeah, that wasn't helping. It was definitely an odd choice.
Yes. It was funny, though.
Yes. She's sort of quirky, Ezri. Well, I guess Jadzia was quirky, too, so it fits.
Yeah.
In a very different way. In a more self-effacing way.
Yeah, I think that is an accurate description.
Because Jadzia was very confident.
Yeah.
You know, you rarely saw her question anything, but Ezri she questions herself and everything around her.
Well, I think this is the interesting part with Ezri.
Yeah.
You know, she said about how she was more confident before she was joined.
Oh, right.
And this is still a whole experience she was not prepared for.
Okay. Back to the infirmary, Sarina is looking around and studying everything. Julian says her norepinephrine levels are elevated. You know, really, when a doctor is examining you, you never want to hear, oh, that's odd. But Sarina pipes in that it's probably due to limbic overcompensation, and Julian says she's right, and he's pretty impressed with her.
And we see here she's already showing some of the signs that she is like Julian and the others, of she's picking these things up very quickly and actually understanding the procedure and what's going on.
Well, we kind of learned that she was understanding some of the things that were happening when she appeared catatonic, because she says she's been listening, and she also says that she's wanted to thank Julian for what he was trying to do for a long time, but she couldn't speak before, so she wasn't able to, and now she can say it out loud.
Yeah.
In the cargo bay, Julian brings Sarina in, and they're all very excited that she can speak. And Jack wonders why she's talking funny, because she sounds quite nasally.
Jack kind of mocks her about the speech.
Yeah. Julian says it's because she needs a little practice. And then the augments inexplicably launch into singing scales, which helps equalize Sarina's voice. And at the end, Julian is just beaming at this.
We get a musical number, basically.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You've said for a long time we need a musical number in Deep Space Nine.
Totally, and they're all excellent singers. This is maybe their real talent. Lauren, in particular, has just a beautiful voice. I watched this part, I don't know, 10 times. Yeah, this is the musical I've been waiting for. I mean, come on. The Traveling Augments musical show, it could be a thing.
Oh, yeah. It could be like the Von Trapp family sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And you call it musically...
The Sound of Augments.
No. You call it musically enhanced instead of genetically enhanced. Oh, no. This is the chance to turn the story of Khan into a musical.
That could work.
Oh, that would be good. In Quarks Now, we find Julian has missed a date with Miles because he's so excited about Sarina. Miles is a little annoyed, but he says he's happy for him.
We also see Morn in the background. This was like a throwback to season 1 of Morn in the background, just out of focus. He's turning up all over the place. I love it.
Yeah, he's quite busy.
Why couldn't Miles just call Julian?
Or go across the hallway to the infirmary and say hello.
Hi, Julian. Or even the cargo bay if he was in there.
Yeah. Well, no, he's not going there after how they treated him last time. But he could have called Julian. Now we go to Julian's quarters and we find Sarina. She says it was easy to break in because his access code only has 6 digits. She says she's having trouble sleeping because she's worried about losing her newfound life. Julian hugs her and comforts her and starts talking about the possibilities of her future. This makes her relax and fall asleep on his shoulder, so Julian gets comfortable on his sofa and lets her sleep. After the ad break here, he wakes up to find her working on his virus datapad.
And she's figured it out.
Yeah, it seems she solved the mutation problem, which amazes him. There's an iPad game about viruses. That's what I kept thinking. It was like she was playing the virus game.
And then figured out the correct ways to deal with it. Okay.
Well, the game is you're actually trying to kill everybody on Earth. It's the opposite.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's like that old game from like, oh gosh, was it the late 90s, Kill All Humans, where you play the aliens?
Well, it was funnier before the pandemic. I'm not sure I'd play it now.
Ooh, good point.
Yeah.
If you notice, Sarina is now talking completely normally.
Yes. Oh, there's only so long she could talk like that as an actress.
So I guess all the synapses have fixed.
It's the singing. The singing fixed it.
I also like to question, why haven't you taken her to talk to Esri or set up counseling sessions with Esri? This is somebody who's been catatonic for
Julian
most of their life.
He's not paying any attention to the well-being of this person.
Yeah.
But he's amazed about her solving the virus problem. He's been working on that for months. She says he would have found the solution eventually. And she's glad that she could do something for him after all that he's done for her, which is highlighting the problem here.
I think she was just being nice to him there.
I guess so.
You figure it out eventually.
Well, then he gets called to the infirmary, but before he leaves her, she says, "You need your breakfast," and hands him what looks like a scone. And for some reason, he looks very touched and he says, "Thank you." I mean, I don't know what that was about. It came out of the replicator. I don't know what was going on there.
It was hand replicated.
It's like, oh, someone cares about me.
I think that might have been the point.
It was just nice to have someone worry about whether or not he'd have breakfast. Unlike Sloane, who sent him a plate of worms.
That was a balanced Klingon breakfast. Don't know what he was complaining about.
Ugh.
But yeah, I think that is the point of he doesn't have someone who cares about him in that way.
Yeah.
And maybe this was somewhat of a new experience. He's also had like a pretty messed up childhood.
Oh, true. Well, back to the cargo bay, Jack is presenting something to Patrick. He says the universe is going to stop expanding and collapse in on itself, and we've got to do something before it's too late. Patrick asks how much time they have left, and Jack says 60 or 70 trillion years. Meanwhile, Lauren is drooling over a picture of Nog when Sarina comes in, and Jack wants her to help with the universe problem, but when she doesn't really agree with their methods, Jack tells her she isn't helping, and she seems really disheartened immediately.
Yeah.
I guess they had to show that quickly. They couldn't waste a lot of time on that.
Well, and I think you're seeing something of what Jack is like here, of he's sort of obsessing about impossible problems.
Yeah.
He's going off down these crazy rabbit holes of ridiculous science.
Which is why you should give him problems to solve, you know?
Yeah, I will come on to that later.
Oh. Later, Julian comes to the cargo bay and we find Sarina sitting and staring into space, causing Julian to be concerned. But it turns out she's doing it on purpose. She says the others are just used to her like this, so it's easier to just be this way.
Oh, dear.
It's awful. And it just shows she needs to get some new people in her life and some counseling, as you suggested.
Yeah.
I mean, just sit here and be quiet. That's how we like you. Julian invites her to Quark's, and Jack asks when they should be ready, but Lauren says, oh, we're not invited. She says she'll help Sarina get dressed, and now we have an inexplicable makeover scene with Lauren dressing Sarina in a girly purple dress and improving her makeup. I really found that annoying, but maybe that's my own personal problem there.
There's also the issue of why couldn't you take these people to the bar to meet the others?
Well, because Cisco said to keep them in the cargo bay.
I'm wondering here is if they were maybe trying to show what they completely failed to do in the first introduction of these characters, which is to show that they're not really that well treated by society.
Yeah, that's true.
That this evolved society is perfectly happy with, yeah, we locked them up so we don't have to think about them.
I mean, Sarina tries to explain it away later, saying, oh, they wouldn't get along out in the real world. But, yeah, we don't exactly see why.
Yeah.
Well, maybe this is what was bothering me, because we have the makeover, and then Julian takes his patient out on a date. That's essentially what's happening.
Oh, we're back to the bad medical drama.
Oh, my goodness. We go to Quark's. Odo and Miles comment on Sarina being beautiful because, now she's wearing makeup and a dress. And then they joke around about men not being open with their feelings, and everyone laughs. This is like, you can so watch this scene and know that it's the 90s. It's actually, it's very funny.
So men will still be following traditional norms and have difficulty expressing feelings and, couldn't tell another man that he liked him as a friend, as a brother, someone he loved. We'll just keep the gender baggage from previous centuries.
Probably written by people who were born in the 40s.
It's so stupid.
Yeah.
And then they make the comment about Odo. Odo isn't a man. He's not actually a gender.
Yeah.
He's actually beyond genders. It's so stupid. When you say the 90s, I assume this would have just blown the network execs' minds. If it had been, you'd brought up, Well, he's a changeling, so is he male or female?
Yeah, he technically doesn't have a gender. Oh, no, they would never have been able to deal with it.
Don't understand. Does not compute.
The world can barely deal with it now, but it was much worse then, yes. Very narrow-minded.
Yeah, that's the best way of putting it.
We have one way that everything can be. Women, they want to wear dresses. They're only interested in men. They don't care about their own lives or their own careers. Oh, and they have to wear makeup so that they're pretty. And then men can't talk about feelings, have to like sports, can't show any signs of maybe affection or liking another man just as a friend. We can't do that. Yes, we have to stick to all the norms.
Yes. Traditional gender roles, traditional gender norms.
Even though we're 300 years in the future. Later, Julian and Sarina are walking through the promenade. Sarina says she likes his friends because that's also important in the gender norm world. And then she kind of analyzes them, saying if she had to find someone to replace Atlas and hold up the world, it would be Miles. That made me wonder, when did she have time to read that book? I guess I'm unclear on her education and how she knows these things. Did they just put lectures on in front of her? I don't know.
Yes.
She also says Kira never doubts herself, and that's what Odo likes about her because he doubts everything but her.
I don't know if doubt's the right word. How about intrinsically doesn't trust any other thing in the universe?
Yeah, doesn't trust is the right word, yeah. She says she sees Julian as brilliant but lonely. Julian just continues to be impressed by her and the way that she can evaluate these people. She says she felt comfortable around them because she didn't have to worry about anyone throwing a tantrum or breaking into tears, like her roommates in the cargo bay. Yeah. She says Jack says we're better than normal people and that's why they keep us locked up, but she says he's wrong. The others wouldn't get by in the real world. Julian agrees they need to go back to the Institute, but she doesn't belong there anymore, which of course is interesting because now he's already pulled her into that way of thinking.
Yes.
Like, oh, these people, they can't function in society, so we should lock them up.
Ouch. Kind of harsh.
It's extremely harsh, yeah. And even if, just because you're throwing a tantrum or breaking into tears, that doesn't mean you can't function in society.
No, I think you should be locked up if those things happen.
Oh, yeah. Maybe you should evaluate the real reasons why. Anyway. She says she'll miss them, they're like her family, and she wonders where she should go now, and Julian asks, why does she need to go anywhere at all? And then he kisses her.
And the General Hospital music plays.
Oh, Julian. Oh, my God. Maybe she needs to live a life, Julian. She hasn't had a life. She's been locked up and hasn't even been able to communicate. Now she can communicate, and your answer to her of where she should go now is she should just stay here with you and be your plaything. That is embarrassing.
This is where I feel, again, the writing of Julian, it doesn't really know where to go. Earlier on, we saw Julian as very much this almost Bond-like character, the ladies' man. And then we've seen this strange evolution of Julian into he's basically bad with relationships and lonely.
Mm-hmm.
And those two things don't jive.
Right.
I think to make Julian a more interesting character, they've backed off how he used to be. And almost if you look back at the earlier Julian, it almost doesn't make sense. With this Julian, I don't think we've really earned it of playing up how he's awkward with people or he's awkward in relationships and he doesn't know the right social cues, if you like. And it doesn't fit.
Right.
So I see what they're going for, but it's a word you've used before. It feels unearned.
Yeah, agreed. Well, Julian tells the augments that Sarina is staying on the station, which makes Patrick cry and Jack angry. Julian tells Jack to stop thinking about himself and think about her, which is rich.
Oh, dear.
Patrick asks Julian why he doesn't make them all better, but Lauren says we're too far gone. Well, Julian then tells Sarina that the others took the news hard. She wants to go see them, but he says wait until the morning, and then he takes her back to Quark's, which is literally the reason she needs to go somewhere else and not move to the station, because the only place to go is Quark's.
You need to expand beyond the strip mall.
Well, anyway, she proves very good at Dabo, which Quark doesn't like, so he encourages them to move away from the game, which they do eventually. And then in the bar, surrounded by so much noise and commotion, she gets suddenly uncomfortable and asks to leave. He drops her off at her quarters and says they can have a quiet dinner in his quarters tomorrow, and then maybe they can go to Ryza and spend some time alone.
Wow. Things are moving a little bit too quickly. Julian's already planning a trip.
I mean, it's like he has a new toy, and he's absolutely oblivious to how this is impacting her. It is really bad.
This is where I see the relationship problems that Julian has and could have been worked up to this kind of thing of seeing that Julian doesn't really know how to have a proper relationship.
Yeah. Well, now Julian is raving about Sarina while Miles tries to fix a replicator. Miles says he's happy for Julian, but it seems like it's happening a little quickly. And she is, after all, his patient. Yes, finally somebody says it to him.
Yeah.
But Julian says, we're genetically enhanced. We do everything fast. Miles isn't impressed by that or by the fact that Julian says, oh, now she's the other doctor's patient, not mine. So that fixes everything.
I feel here, if you were the good friend, but again, you can't express emotions, so I don't know how.
Right. Oh, yeah, you forgot that, yeah.
No, I think if you were the good friend, you would really want to tell Julian, look what you're doing. You're rushing in. And if you were that close a friend, maybe you knew what he was like, how he would overdo this.
That's true,
and go, Julian, do you remember the last time you did this?
Yeah.
But you would know what your friend was like well enough.
Yeah, somebody should be talking some sense into him.
Yeah.
I mean, even Esri, as the counselor, should be talking some sense into him at this point.
Esri, having the memories of Dax as well, should have a fairly good understanding of what Julian is like.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
And be saying to him, here's what Jadzia would have said to you.
Mm-hmm. That would be a good idea.
Yeah.
But Julian just seems to be excited to find a genetically enhanced girlfriend. And he says she's the woman he's been waiting for all his life.
I thought that was Jadzia.
Well, apparently not. We've moved on. This is the problem, though. I mean, this isn't about you. You're the one who's only thinking of yourself. Now, in his quarters, Julian is preparing for a romantic dinner, but Sarina never turns up. And the computer somehow knows where Sarina is, even though she doesn't have a badge. And we've pretty much established that that's when the computer knows where you are. But anyway, the computer says she's in her quarters, so Julian goes there and overrides the door lock to enter and finds her staring out the window, unmoving. She doesn't seem to react to his presence at all, so we've fallen back to how she was at the beginning.
Yeah, it seems like she's gone totally catatonic again.
Yeah.
Now, I have to bring up, in ethical terms, if he thinks there's a medical emergency, shouldn't he contact the other doctor to come and override the door rather than him doing it?
Oh, rather than break into his girlfriend's room. Oh.
Yeah.
You found the flaw. Yep.
Ethically questionable.
Ethically questionable. I can use my medical override and find out what my new toy is doing. So back to the infirmary we go, and Julian says the new pathways in her brain are still functioning, but there's no neural activity in them. He holds her hand and talks to her, saying everything is going to be all right. But later, Julian keeps researching, and Sarina just remains unresponsive.
Yeah.
Back to the cargo bay, and Julian asks the augments for help. Jack acts a bit petty at first, but they agree to help, so Julian goes back to his quarters and waits. In the cargo bay, the others are whispering quietly in a corner, and Patrick says he's sure, and Lauren says they have to tell Julian. But Jack says if they don't tell him, they can all stay together. But Lauren breaks them out of the cargo bay, and they head out to find Julian. It's like, this is where a phone would come in handy. I mean, can't you call him?
Yeah.
Eventually, they find Julian's quarters, and Patrick tells him that Sarina can still talk. She's just afraid. They don't know what she's afraid of, but Jack says, we think it has something to do with you, Julian. Duh.
Yeah.
So Julian goes to Sarina and pleads with her to talk to him, saying he loves her, oh my, and wants them to be together. And he asks if she loves him. And she finally speaks, saying she doesn't even know what love is, because she's been listening to Foreigner.
Yep. She found the music station.
She says she doesn't understand what's happening and she just wants to make him happy because she owes him everything.
Oof.
But Julian says she doesn't owe him anything. But of course, this is the problem, Julian. She says, I'm sorry. I wish I could be the woman you want me to be. Oh my God.
Julian's as bad as Dax. Remember when she landed on that planet, was there for 20 minutes and was in love and was going to spend the next 70 years with the guy?
But at least that was a person who could make his own decisions.
That's true.
This is like, she's almost like a child. It's creepy. In the Replomat, Miles comes to say hi and asks if everyone has left. Jack, Lauren, and Patrick have left for the Institute, and Sarina's shuttle is leaving soon. Julian has arranged an internship for her at a research center where she'll be living with the scientist's family. Julian is beating himself up for not putting his patient's needs above his own. Ugh, finally. And Miles says, "You didn't want to be lonely. Nobody does." He invites him to dinner, but Julian declines so he can sit and pout.
Yeah, and then Miles says, "I have to go to work."
Yeah.
This is another example to me of that missing work-life balance. For these evolved people, your friend is in crisis.
Yeah.
Because it's Julian, and he is either inexperienced or bad with relationships, or his augmentation makes it so he doesn't really see them in the same way. And you're rushing off to go to work. Surely this would be call in, tell Cisco, yeah, I need to spend time with Julian.
Yeah.
Maybe get Esri involved as well.
Yes.
I feel sometimes they're making it like a 20th century, because it was still the 20th century then, rather than making it more evolved people.
Yeah. No, I agree. Well, now Julian walks Sarina to her shuttle, and she seems happy to be going to make a new life for herself. They say they'll miss each other, and she says, "Don't forget me," before they kiss each other goodbye. And then there's an announcement for a final boarding call, which we have never heard before. And then Julian watches her shuttle fly away, looking quite sad and pouty.
We've heard the announcement once before for Bareil. No, it might have been Shakar.
A final boarding call?
There was a boarding for when a shuttle was leaving.
Oh, I think you're right. I think it was Shakar. Yeah, there was some kind of an announcement. Yeah. I think we laughed about it then, too.
We didn't see any baggage handlers. We have seen baggage handlers.
Yeah, there were no baggage handlers. Well, and Sarina is still wearing that purple dress, and she doesn't seem to have much luggage, so I guess they didn't need that.
Could have gone to Garrick and got some more clothes made.
That's true. Well, we've reached the end. Do you have over-analysis?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Number 1, put a guard on the cargo bay door.
Yeah, they break out every time.
What happened last time?
If you want to make sure they stay in there,
yeah,
let somebody stand there. I totally agree.
Next thing, I assume this is like the soap opera Rebound episode, because even though Julian wasn't actually involved with Dax, and she wasn't interested in him and had married somebody else and was planning on having kids with them, Julian still felt that, he'd lost his girlfriend.
Yeah. No, I don't think that's what this was.
Yeah.
But yes, I see your point. But here I think this was really them showing us, well, maybe the emotional immaturity of Julian, right, is probably the point. I criticize it, but that's probably how he would be. He probably would be like that because he doesn't seem to have a lot of emotional intelligence.
Right.
But I think, too, this is maybe his only opportunity to connect to people like him and don't have to hide. But by the way, I still don't quite understand, how do they pick the ones who have to stay in an institution?
Yes.
I mean, we understand why Julian, because he's proven that he can function in society and isn't, trying to take it over. But also his father had to pay a price and go to jail. So we're just going to let Sarina out?
Oh, yeah, she's fine.
There's no hearing, no evaluation. I mean, we didn't test the medical procedure, so why should we test that? Some stuff doesn't make any sense. It's too easy.
Well, that leads directly on to my next point, which is the treatment of these people within the Federation, certainly on Earth. Mm-hmm. They keep on coming back to this, they can't function in normal society. Well, does that mean they keep them completely locked away? They can't go out? Maybe they could be chaperoned. They clearly are very technically clever. Look at what they did with that machine where they rebuilt the thing basically to work.
Yep.
They clearly have a lot to offer society. All of them seem to be able to do these kind of things. Surely you would want to actually employ them? Well, that wouldn't be for money. Maybe channel their skills in a useful direction.
Yes, for innovation.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have them working on new things, new technologies and research and things like that. And I'm sure you could keep some of the stuff closed off if that's what you're concerned about, is them communicating with the Dominion or whatever. You put them on
making
a closed
bad
system
decisions
or whatever. Yeah. But also, if you made them part of society, then those kinds of things would probably happen less frequently, where they felt like they would have to sneak out and do something.
Right. And surely in this evolved society, there would be people willing to help.
Yeah, willing to work with them. Exactly.
If they're in a work environment, say with other scientists or other people working on technology, you could have somebody who could be with them and saying, Jack, you're doing that thing again. You can't talk to people like that. Have that level of I wouldn't say oversight, but help rather than just going to lock them away. Is this really a commentary on the mental illness concept of you just lock mentally ill people in institutions and then the problem goes away?
Yeah, maybe that's it. To some degree, we're sort of complaining about our own critique here because we complained in the last episode when they showed them, really acting out and maybe actually being difficult to work with and interact with. And here we don't really see it because they've toned it down because it was so one note in that previous episode.
Well, that's the thing. This is a huge change in these characters. Jack's no longer dangerous.
Well, at least they don't show it. Yeah, they don't show it.
Yeah. They show him more as sort of he's thinking about too many things at once. He's coming up with crazy ideas and he has difficulty being polite or interacting like, you would expect. And Patrick just seems sort of enthusiastic about everything, almost childlike. And then when it doesn't happen, this one, it isn't sort of showing mockingly of like when you have to take the uniforms off and he's like, oh. Yeah,
and he does burst into tears one time. But again, it just wasn't done for laughs in the same way as the previous episode.
Yeah.
Look, we're the masters of headcanon.
Okay.
Maybe they've been going through some successful treatments of working with other people. Like maybe their time working with Julian
did help.
Shifted something in them. Yeah, I don't know. Not that he fixed them, but maybe it shifted something in them to say, oh, we were able to show that we could contribute. So, maybe they've been working on it. I mean, that's a lot of headcanon for how the show has treated them so far and how the Federation has treated them.
Interesting. We might have missed the whole point.
It happens. I'm sure someone about this is going to send us some email, so.
But at least in this episode, I feel it was more of a sympathetic approach.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think my final point is, I think Esri needs to go back and read some of her books on counseling.
Yeah.
I think this whole thing has mixed her up.
Yeah. I mean, she wasn't technically in a counseling position, but you still have to have a mature conversation in that situation because Julian was obviously was beating himself up and was unhappy. You got to be supportive. Yeah. If you want to be known as a useful counselor, you got to get yourself together.
Right. And that wraps up my overanalysis. What have you got for me, Cam?
Well, I was questioning that somehow Sarina could stop neural activity in her brain by just staring into space. Is that how that works?
Who knows what augments can do?
Yeah, I don't know. I thought that was a little quirky. We were talking about Esri and Miles stepping in, but I also took note in my overanalysis that really Cisco should step in and point out that Julian is not acting professionally in this situation.
Yeah.
Miles tried to tell him, but he didn't listen, and he didn't try really hard. But, I mean, his behavior was wildly inappropriate and maybe even a bit abusive, and nobody did anything.
Yeah, I think if Miles and Julian are as close as they're made out to be, then you would think so.
Yeah, but you can't have those deep conversations. We already covered that in the 90s.
Well, this goes back to Miles's. Remember when he was talking to the captain in The Sound of Her Voice? And he talked about how he couldn't talk to people.
Yeah.
And it's
about the really hard things.
Yeah. And maybe that, again, is another nod to perceived gender stereotypes of you don't show your emotions. You don't, it's not manly to act that way.
Yeah.
And this is acting as a commentary on that.
Because men can only be one way.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it involves football. Well, let me go to women in the future. I'm glad that Julian finally figured out by the end that Sarina's entire existence wasn't to make him happy.
Yeah.
I wondered if maybe he should build himself a robot that he can control and play with. It can look exactly like Jadzia, but just do whatever he wants.
I would expect with Julian it would resemble an anime character.
Yeah, maybe. Speaking of robots and dolls, or toys, I didn't like the way we treated Sarina like a doll. I mean, I guess it's because that's essentially all she's ever been, just sitting silently, not participating. She is just like a toy or a doll sitting on the bed. But in this episode, we're dressing her up and we're telling her how to talk and what to do and where to go. And I found that to be, I don't know, it just made me very uncomfortable, the way we were treating her. I'm not even sure what they did at the end was the right thing. Like, they've sent her off to live with some scientist family and work at a research station instead of putting her into some kind of counseling. Maybe there'll be a counselor wherever she goes and they'll help her get into society because she's not been part of society. And so she's going to need some guidance. And I don't know who this scientist is, but that might not be the right person.
Question for you here.
Yeah.
Do you think the point of this episode is actually to question gender norms and gender expectations?
No, because there's no criticism of it.
Yeah.
If someone had talked to Julian about it, maybe.
Yes.
But nobody did. Or if they had tried to change anything, or even at that table, whether they were all sitting around in quarks, if somebody, one of the non-humans, maybe would have pointed out, oh my God, you guys, right? This is not, not everybody is like humans.
Yeah, that just popped into my head. But to do an episode like that, you need to have a criticism of the thing it's talking about.
Yes.
That doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. The last item I have in Women in the Future is one of the things that I really didn't like in the episode Statistical Probabilities was how they did that thing with Lauren where they just overly sexualized her, because they kept doing a lot of that in the early seasons of Deep Space Nine with the women who they wanted us to think was different, because only different women will be sexual. I'm glad that they at least played that down here. I mean, yes, she was obsessing a little bit over Nog, but even that wasn't that much. And I think you said something to me yesterday that it was less about her being overly sexual about Nog, and it was more like she was just a super fan. She was just becoming obsessed in a different way. And I agree. I think that was different. It's like they made this sort of more of a quirk with her rather than a defining trait.
Yeah.
So I just found it less insulting to women for a change.
I think that might be a good point about all these characters. They made them having these quirks rather than sort of overplaying a mocking stereotype.
They tamed it down. Yeah. Well, then let's go to rating. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral. What is your rating?
Solid neutral. I didn't think it was bad, but I think it was an episode that you could have done a lot better with. I think you could have addressed those things that we've talked about here. I wouldn't describe it as good. There was a good musical number in the middle.
Oh, very good, yeah.
But I feel it's this blurry writing for Julian. It's making one thing or the other. I think I would have preferred the neurodivergent Julian from the start and build on that character.
Yeah, and make that his thing. Yeah. That would have been good. Well, as we've been talking about the episode, I didn't put this in my notes, but this just sort of occurred to me while we were talking. If this episode had happened in season 1, and it very well could have, and it was before, or there hadn't been statistical probabilities, so this is just a season 1 episode, a bottle episode, right?
Yeah.
I am relatively confident I would have really been mad about it. But we've come a long way since then, and I agree, I do think it's neutral. It feels like a very typical episode of Star Trek, where we have just brought in some new character, somebody falls in love with them, and then they have to leave. I mean, that happens in Trek when we're episodic. Right. So it feels like a very standard issue episode. The trouble, of course, is with all of the background of Julian, it just makes it a little bit harder because of the way he's treated women and talked about women and not respected them before. So I feel like if I had seen this in season 1, I'd be a lot harsher on it than neutral. But I think neutral at this point is the right answer.
Was it Geordi in TNG they always picked on, that he would fall in love and they'd leave?
I don't remember. They had the one episode where he fell in love with the hologram that he created of the scientist. They weren't really good at any love stories. Well, it's impossible to write love stories when it's episodic. I think it's because like in this episode, he's telling her that he's in love with her and we're 30 minutes into the show. And I think it's been 5 or 6 days.
Dax did it in 20, I think.
Yeah, and I complained about it then too. It's silly. It's very silly.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was okay.
It was an episode.
Yeah. I would watch the singing again.
You did like the singing.
In fact, I did pull it up on YouTube last night and watched it again. I did, and they're very good, yeah. Well, I think that wraps up Season 7, Episode 5. Come back next week for Episode 6. You know, we started strong, but we're sort of coasting now. I hope we pick up some more good episodes here.
Well, the next episode is a Weyoun episode.
Oh, okay. That'll probably be good.
An extended Weyoun episode.
All right.
And I'm not going to tell you whether it was good, bad, or indifferent, but you asked a lot of questions about the Vorta.
Oh, I'm going to learn something.
Yes.
Oh, I'm going to go watch it tonight then.
And regular listeners will know what we think of Combs.
Yeah, I gave him the Louise Fletcher Award last season.
Yep. Well deserved, I think.
That's a lot. That's a lot for me. All right, well, I am going to go watch the next episode. And in the meantime, if you'd like to send us your own overanalysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, you can email us at ReBingeIt@gmail.com, or you can tweet us at ReBingeIt. We're also on Instagram and YouTube at ReBingeIt. You can check us out on talkthroughmedia.com, and you can also join the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Star Trek TTM podcasts. There hasn't been a lot of activity on the Facebook group lately, but we do post each episode there, and you can put your feedback right into Facebook, and we will interact with you.
And there's no reason not to interact with the Facebook group.
Yeah, you can talk to my nemesis, Michael C.
Or any other Star Trek topics.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us on the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.